competition. We're going to have a quick overview of the project ambitions and the proposed outcomes. Then we're going to go on to the kind of timelines, funding, the application process, and the evaluation. And then we will have time for Q&A at the end. But before that, we're going to hand over to Keith Bullock, who's going to do some welcome and introductions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the call. I don't think we'll do introductions for everyone with 307 of us so far on the call, but I certainly will welcome everyone. And I think what I'll just do is spend a few minutes providing a bit of context for what you will hear. So the substance will come after my slot, but I thought it might be useful to just a bit of orientation, who we are and why we do this. And I know I can see many familiar names already joining the call, so I know some of you will know this, so I shall keep it quick. So yes, my name is Keith Bullock. I'm the Programme Director of a thing called Future Network Programmes. So I'll explain a little bit about that. We sit in a department called Digital Infrastructure, but you can most readily understand that as telecoms. So it is the department that owns the policy areas for fixed telecoms, so all the stuff around gigabit rollout, super fast broadband rollout, all that type of thing. It is the home of the wireless infrastructure strategy and all our ambitions around 4G, 5G and 6G. It's also the place where we do the policy around the security and resilience of the nation's telecommunications networks, so its role as critical national infrastructure. So it is the department that brought out the legislation around high-risk vendors, and related to that, it's the department that is looking into the supply chains of telecommunications networks at the moment, and so looking for greater diversity there to reduce the reliance on just one or two suppliers for the nation's infrastructure. And in all these areas, the reason behind nearly all that policy can be mostly understood as growth and productivity, either driving it or protecting it, one way or the other. And my team, the Future Network Programmes team, supports all of those policy areas where we make what we call interventions, again, more simply understood as spending large amounts of money to advance or inform those policy areas. So we've been doing this for a while now, in fact since 2018, which is when I left the industry and came into government. Some of you I know on this call will know about the 5G testbeds and trials programme. So 5 years ago, on the earliest days of 5G, we sponsored projects all around the country across many sectors to explore the opportunities and challenges associated with 5G. And in doing this, we were not so much interested in coverage questions. We were interested in the applications of the technology. How might it work in manufacturing, in health, in tourism, and many other sectors as well. And if you look back at some of the materials generated, you'll see that we covered a lot of the UK with those interventions, a lot of sectors, and it was all about learning about the potential of the technology, and can be seen, I think, most easily as a forerunner of what we're going to be talking about today. In a very similar way, we're also the department that sponsored the DCIA Digital Connectivity Infrastructure Accelerator, which I assume, again, many people on the call will be familiar with. The business of making local authority assets easier to consume for mobile network operators for the benefit of citizens, business and the public sector, and to remove some of the friction, if you like, in the transactions required to make that work. And again, that can also be seen, I think, to an extent as part of the to a degree as a part of the forerunner for this. We run other programs as well. We run a thing called the Open Networks program. We've just finished a competition like this one, which put out £80 million in a much more technical area of the industry, all about testing out what's called open network architecture. And we do other things as well under the banner of shared outcomes funds. So as we've been doing this since 2018, obviously we've learned a few things along the way, at least I hope we have. A couple of things I think worth mentioning those at a high level before we get into the detail of the call today. One, I think it's important to understand everything we fund, we do in order to advance or inform our own policy objectives. So in other words, we're not a disinterested party in this. And I know there are some, especially a lot of R&D funding from central government, where it is, funding of R&D because R&D is a good thing and good things will happen. We are more tightly bound to the policy area than those. And because of that, we stay interested and we stay engaged, which you may consider to be a good or a bad thing, but it's certainly worth being aware of. We will want to talk throughout this engagement. We'll be really interested in what you're experiencing, in what you're doing. And a big part of this for us is the sharing of that learning and that experience. Obviously, 40 million doesn't go a really long way on a national scale. So a big part of what we do is, will be about trying to share what we learn with those areas that are not successful with funding or may be interested or may be successful in future possible rounds of funding. So please be prepared for that level of engagement. We try not to be intrusive and try not to look over your shoulder, but we will be interested. And I think the DCIA program, which I mentioned earlier, I think set a good benchmark for making that engagement really effective. So not too much. And the reports back from the events that were held were great, that a lot of the value of that was seen to be in the sharing of the experience. So first point really is to, I suppose, take on board, if you can, the spirit of that in your bids. The other thing I was going to mention, I think, thing we've learned fairly early on is that we try not to be too prescriptive about this. I mean, one of the whole reasons for doing it this way is to let people with knowledge and experience and enthusiasm and the right motivations bring their ideas to us rather than us try and do too much to in fact predetermine what those are. So we are, very reliant on you. We're very interested to hear about your ideas. I hope you will find the rest of this session interesting and that it will encourage you to bid. And we look forward to an ongoing dialogue with you. I think I'll stop there, Jamie, so that we can crack on with the more interesting stuff.
Not at all, Keith. Thanks very much for that. And yeah, let's go straight into the next segment, which is on the policy context. But before that, I will do some very brief introductions to the rest of the team who are helping with the briefing today. So I'm Jamie Vizier-Tech, and I'm the strategy and policy lead for the programme. But I also want to introduce Kate. Do you want to say hello?
Yep. Hi all, I'm Kate Beeling. I'm the comms and engagement lead for the 5G adoption programme.
Thanks, Kate. And we've got Jonathan.
Hi all, I'm Jonathan Durant. So I'm based in the Future Networks team and the programme development lead.
We've also got Brad on the call.
Morning all, Brad McGuire. I'll be part of the technical design authority team for these programmes.
And Ed.
Hi, I'm Ed. I'm a technical advice team.
Thanks, Ed. And we've also got Graham.
Morning all, I'm Graham and I'm the Programme Management Officer.
Thanks. So that's kind of the team who will be leading us through the briefing today. So as I say, very briefly, just to build on what Keith's already outlined, we're going to go over a little bit of the policy context for the programme. So I don't have to tell any of you this, but telecoms networks are vitally important for underpinning everything that goes on in the economy. As government, we've kind of already set out in digital strategy, ambition to kind of build a competitive and innovative digital economy. And you probably saw we also published earlier this year our science and technology framework, which we kind of set out key pillars to innovation in the economy and also some critical technologies. Digital connectivity and improving it is one of the government's levelling up priorities. So yeah, one of the priorities there is kind of ensuring that all parts of the UK can kind of have that benefits of improved digital connectivity. So we're here to talk particularly about wireless connectivity today, and as you know, 5G. So we think 5G and other advanced wireless tech as well have potential to unlock significant economic and social benefits right across the UK. 5G in particular is foundational technology that we've kind of outlined. Future telecoms, as I said in the science tech framework, was one of the critical technologies. So we think the advancement and development of 5G networks and technologies will be crucial to kind of underpinning and achieving that strategic advantage in this prioritized area. I hope you've all seen the wireless infrastructure strategy that came out earlier in the year. So that kind of underpins everything we're doing here today in the program. So we did set out a new kind of standalone 5G ambition as part of that. But we also set out a framework to ensure that people, businesses and public services across the UK are able to realise the full benefits of 5G and other advanced wireless connectivity as soon as possible. We set out in the strategy that we kind of appreciate a lot of the economic and societal benefits will come at a local level. And so local and regional authorities play a crucial role in facilitating that deployment of 5G. But we also know kind of the key role they play in leading the adoption and innovation in public services. So it's a very, very quick outline of the higher level policy context. Going to the next section, please. So we're going to do a quick overview of the project ambitions. So as I was saying, we announced this in the wireless infrastructure strategy back in April. We announced £40 million of funding for 5G innovation regions. We are aiming to establish a diverse portfolio. We set up to 10 5G innovation regions all across the UK. So in the devolved administrations as well, we want different geographic, sectoral and technological challenges and solutions. So a very broad portfolio there. We've set out what the strategic programme objectives are. So 5G innovation regions essentially will lead on the government's vision for communities across the UK to take advantage of what we think is the transformative effect of advanced wireless connectivity and technologies. So as Keith was outlining, as a department, we have a wider ambition to drive telecoms innovation. We've got other kind of programs that are running parallel to this. But at the core of that is to ensure we have more secure and resilient networks in a diverse and competitive supply chain. So in terms of 5G innovation regions, the three key strategic objectives that we've outlined are to drive economic growth, so support those places to kind of adopt wireless connectivity for services based around what those local opportunities for growth are and their local strengths. We've got accelerate commercial investment, so we want to kind of drive that investment in 5G networks and other advanced wireless nexus as well. So through this, we want to aggregate and demonstrate that demand for advanced wireless services. And we also want to foster the 5G ecosystem, building on, as Keith was saying, the 5G test beds and trials, moving on to the next stage of widespread adoption. So I think we're going to the next slide, please. So in terms of activities, so as I say, this is a place-based intervention. We do want local areas to kind of tailor what they want to do around what their local opportunities are. So we do expect it to be a broad scope of activities and expenditure based on those local requirements to support and kind of go back to those strategic program objectives that I just covered. So our ambition, we do see this as an enabling phase in terms of that widespread adoption activities, to help build that business case and attract commercial investment during and beyond the grant funding period. So it's to provide evidence to demonstrate the case for ongoing 5G adoption initiatives, not only in the regions that are receiving funding, but also in other regions. So 5G innovation regions should leverage that DSIT funding to run sector-specific activities, say based around those key regional areas of strategic value. So as I said, all of this is aimed at validating that widespread adoption of use cases to drive it across those key sectors in the economy. So this isn't about extending existing mobile coverage. This is about the development of those use cases and adoption of those use cases. So the development of network infrastructure should be limited to that which fulfills the requirements of the adoption. of those use cases and services. So based on our evaluation and previous funded programs, and also building on kind of the engagement we did in the pre-competition engagement market phase, we expect regions to carry out the following enabling activities as part of this program. So there is a lot more detail on these kind of 4 buckets of activities in the guidance. So please do have a look at the guidance. So we think activities should revolve around developing that regional ecosystem, identifying what the strategic sectoral projects and use cases are, mobilizing and delivering on those strategic projects and use cases, and finally developing a sustainability plan to carry on those activities after the program funding has ended. Next slide, please. So expected characteristics of an applying local authority. So yeah, in terms of local authorities who we have said it would be a regional approach, so multiple local authorities. So we do appreciate that's kind of a very short delivery time scale. We've got to the end of the spending review to kind of develop this program. So we are looking for regions and local authorities who have established or are looking to establish digital adoption and growth plans, utilising advanced wireless networks in public sector services and in those key vertical sectors. We want regions to demonstrate that they can identify areas of unmet digital potential, that we have experience identifying gaps in local digital ecosystems and development of those interventions to address those gaps. We'll also be looking for experience in scaling existing small-scale initiatives and creating longer-term project viability while attracting that inward investment as we set out in the objectives and applying digital solutions to those. We'd expect regions and local authorities to have the appropriate expertise and capacity in place, so especially across those key local authority functions such as planning and economic development. Ability to access spectrum and network capabilities to deliver the project, or have a clear plan to acquire and build them in a timely manner. And of course, consideration of the value of promoting open standards, encouraging interoperability between vendors and operators, and lastly, secure by design. So that's kind of a very quick overview of kind of the project ambitions. Going to the next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the competition timelines, the funding that's available, and the application process. So as you'll all know, the competition launched yesterday. We are running the competition for 6 whole weeks, so it will finish on the 10th of September. The deadline for clarification questions will be the 3rd of September, so it's a week before closing of the competition. We expect to undertake assessment of the bids in mid-September so that we can notify the successful applicants and regions in mid to late October. And then we're kind of expecting mobilisation and delivery to commence from November. As I was saying, the grant claim period will be between November and the end of the spending review period, so that's the 31st of March 2025. You notice that we kind of do have quite a short of a normal competition window of 6 weeks. However, we have attempted to simplify the application process and documentation and evidence that we require as part of this. So hopefully that provides sufficient time for local authorities to submit more bids. I will say a little bit more about this a little later on. Go to the next slide, please. So we are investing £40 million into this competition, up to the 31st of March 2025. We do expect kind of a broad range of bid values to come in, but we have said we expect to make grant funding of around 3.8 billion for each region. This is to give us a little bit of flexibility in the programme spend, but I say we do appreciate that values might be around that, but we do kind of ask regions to bid for no more than 3.8 million. So we're not mandating any level of match funding from local authorities, but it is expected that this may include other complementary sources of funding. This could be public funding or other potential private funding. And this should be reflected in the proposals and potential of greater aspirations for delivery. For local authorities in England and Wales, we'll be awarding the grants under Section 31 of the Local Government Act, where we can't do that. So for projects in Scotland and Northern Ireland, we'll fund under Section 8 of the Industrial Development Act. But of course, we'll aim to ensure that those authorities we do award under that Act do not incur a higher burden than those funded under the Local Government Act. So that's in line with the new burdens doctrine. Next slide, please. So yeah, in terms of the competition application process, so the guidance and supporting documentation are on Gov.uk, so please have a look at those. We ask local authorities to submit their applications by the 10th of September. This will be by the Find a Grant service, so you can access all of that on Gov.uk. So in terms of assessment, DSIT expert assessors will then score the applications and will notify applicants of the outcome. There's not going to be an interview process. As we say, we appreciate it's a shorter timescale and window over the summer to get your bids in. All eligible and in-scope applications will receive assessor feedback upon request. And we're going to work with the successful applicants during the mobilisation period. So from November onwards, we will agree an MOU or grant funding agreements as relevant with the projects going forward. And as I say, delivery is expected to commence from November onwards. So as I said before, we are trialling a more streamlined and less bureaucratic approach than previously. And that starts with the application process. So as we'll see in a minute, there are fewer questions, reduced word count, less detail that required than previously. Also, while there's no requirement on consortia applying, so there's no need for complex partnership agreements to be made throughout the competition, but we do expect local authorities and regions to set out in their bid what suppliers and industry partners they will be working with. And we'll say letters of support can help with that in the application. So our rationale for kind of a shorter window is giving any successful projects kind of more time to spend focused on delivery. I will say now throughout the competition, we will have a mailbox. So, and that'll be at the end of the slides where you can send through any questions that you do have, and we'll be able to provide you with a full response on those as soon as possible. And I said, we've got experts across the department who can help with any tricky technical questions that you might have. Next slide, please. So eligibility criteria, there's just a few must-haves. So applicants must be a UK local authority, as we set out in the guidance. That does include combined authorities. Of course, kind of no high-risk vendors are permitted to participate in the projects. So please do refer to the NCSC advice and guidance on that. So public funds must not be used to pay for any high-risk vendor products or services throughout the competition. As I say, please have a look at that guidance and advice if you're unsure on that. The competition also not fund any procurement, commercial, business development or supply chain activity with any Russian or Belarusian entity as lead partner or subcontractor. This includes any goods or services originating from a Russian or Belarusian source. Next slide, please. So onto the assessment questions. As I said, we've kind of tried to streamline the application process a little bit. So they'll be assessed against evidence in kind of two key areas. So we've got two buckets of questions. We've got section A, which is the vision, which is based on the business case, and also section B, which is delivering the vision. Both will be equally weighted. So in terms of the questions we're asking in the vision, we'll be looking at what your project will deliver at a regional level. That'll be a triage question. We'll note that now. We're looking at what projects we deliver at sectoral level. As we set out in the guidance, we are looking for key sector. Well, we've set out what we think the key sectors are, but we're not limiting to those key sectors. As I say, it's up to the place to identify what the sectors with the most local growth opportunities are. But we have set out in the guidance what we think the key sectors we want to cover are. We've got a question on how we ensure the environment created by your proposal will support development of an ecosystem for 5G and other advanced wireless tech within the UK, and what local strengths and commitment will support the delivery of the 5G innovation region. In terms of delivery of the vision, and the second triage question will be providing a detailed project plan, usual stuff. how the project will be governed, decisions made, and risks managed. There'll be a question on provide an outline of proposal for sources and uses of funding for the project and explain how the uses represent value for money. And the final question will be on what is your approach to ensuring the project will be sustainable after the period of DSIT funding. I say there is a word limit on those questions, but we will kind of accept supporting documentation where that's necessary as well. Can you go on to the next one, please? So subsidy control. So like a couple of previous projects, we are delivering through a no subsidy route to local authorities. That does mean that public authorities need to ensure they are working on complying with the UK Subsidy Control Act. Local authorities who receive funding as part of the programme are responsible for the spending curve, so they may have subsidy implications depending on the onboard relationships and parties receiving that funding. So we've set out in the guidance a few examples of the routes and approaches you might want to use in that. So again, please do have a look at the guidance. There's a section on subsidy control. Applicants should receive their own independent subsidy control legal advice during delivery, and if requested to do so, we will ask to share that with DSIT and its professional advisors. And also, if an applicant receives subsidy in breach of domestic subsidy control arrangements and may be required to repay that subsidy, and as I say, all further information on subsidy control is in the application guidance, so please have a look at that. Can we go to the next question, please? Sorry, slide. So they're saying a key element of the programme is benefits and dissemination of learnings. We do want the regions themselves to kind of monitor what the benefits of the projects will be, and also to share those benefits and disseminate where possible. So we will have benefits reporting metrics, which we will share with successful applicants during the mobilisation stage. We will be having quarterly progress, benefits realisation and lessons learned reporting. And we do expect lead authorities and project suppliers to participate in the evaluation activities both during and after the lifetime of the project. We are encouraging projects to look for opportunities to collaborate with other ecosystem participants on topics of shared interest. And hopefully you also have seen in the announcement that UK 10 will be supporting the collaboration and dissemination work for the 5G innovation regions on the key sectors that we've identified. I see Bob's just put a comment in, so please do get in touch with Bob if you have any questions on that. So on to the next slide, please. So now we get on to the interesting stuff, how to write a good application. So yeah, as I was saying, I've said it a few times, please do read the guidance carefully, have a look through the guidance, make sure you're hitting all those points in there. We do set out exactly what we expect to see in the bid, so please do look at that. There's a lot of material in there, but it is about drafting those high quality responses to the questions. Please use straightforward language, so communicate those plans clearly and succinctly. So we do want to get through these and get to the substance of it, so no jargon, please. And so it won't give you a high score if it makes it harder for us to understand what you're planning to do. So do keep it straightforward. Thank you. And there is a word limit, so I don't think you'll be able to go with the word limit on the Google Forms, but you can do some supporting documents if you think it is necessary. But we are anticipating a lot of bids coming through, so that's why there's a word count. So yeah, please do don't go over the word count. Thanks. So that's kind of it, a very quick run through of kind of the application process and the background. But I say we do have a shared inbox, so if you have any questions that aren't going to be answered today, you can pop us an email on there. But I will say we are keeping a log of all the Q&A that are coming in, so we will answer those where we can today, but where we can't, we will come back to you on those, and we will be publishing adding to the clarification log that is also on Gov UK. So I think we're actually very much ahead of time, so we've got quite a bit of time for the Q&A session now. And to be honest, I haven't been keeping track of all the Q&A that's coming in. I think the team have though. So I think I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to take us through some of the questions and Q&A that we've had, and hopefully we can answer some of those for you today.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so as Jamie said, if we can't answer your questions or we run out of time, which feels unlikely now given we've got an hour, but if we do, then we're planning on updating the Q&A log twice weekly. So yeah, don't stress about that. Your questions will be answered. Same for any of those that came through when you were registering for the event, or if you've emailed us, we'll make sure we answer everyone's questions. There's no problem there. And also, if you could try and use the Q&A function, just so that just purely to get everything in one place, that would be great. It's really confusing how many questions coming through. So first one, are you focused on any particular TRLs? That's from Barney Smith. My understanding is we're focusing on higher TRLs, but I don't know if anyone wants to come in on that from the team.
Yeah, I'll comment on that, Kate. Yes, we're not focusing on any particular TRL, but as Kate alluded to, we are. This is the natural extension of test beds and trials. So clearly, we're looking more at sustainability and creating a region which will have life beyond funding. So clearly, that alludes to higher TRLs.
Great. Thanks, Brad. Next question from Barney Smith again. Is LoRaWAN, and I hope I said that properly, eligible? I believe it is eligible. Yeah, Ed, is there anything else you want to say on that?
That's an easy one. Yes, it is.
I will add, we are, as I say, we do set out in the guidance, we are looking for a diverse portfolio. All advanced wireless tech is accepted. So 5G is just the poster child for this particular program, but as I say, we do set out in the guidance a kind of technology we will accept.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Next question from Anonymous. Are successful applications relying on having a technology partner in place to work with already? Jamie, I don't know if you want to take that one.
So we've said regions should have kind of that readiness in terms of developing those relationships. So we have said establishing those partnerships. So in the application, we will be looking for them to at least start developing that partnership, so they are ready by the time we get to mobilization in November. So if you've already got a technology partner in place, then great, but we will be looking for regions that do have platforms ready to go in November. So that is something to bear in mind.
Brill, probably another one for you, Jamie. Given the differences in 5G rollout in parts of the country, will this be taken into account in evaluation?
I say when we talk about 5G rollouts, where we're talking about where the question's talking about public 5G rollout as well. So we have got that 5G standalone ambition. We do say this intervention isn't about that public network; it is about those use cases, and that's might not be contingent on the 5G network. So we do appreciate that some of this might be 5G private networks or other private networks or using existing public networks. So yeah, we will kind of take that into account during the evaluation to look at what regions are looking to do. But I say it kind of harks back to the previous question, looking to develop those relationships with partners. So yeah, it's all I will say, it's not about increasing that public mobile coverage. It is about those use cases that use 5G and other advanced wireless connectivity. So yeah.
Great. Next question from Glenn PC. Which part of government is leading on the amendment of PFI contracts to allow telecoms equipment to be added where currently it is excluded, e.g. streetlights?
I believe that's DFT, and I think DFT do have a team who are looking into that, and I think it's some of the work that feeds on from the DCIA project. So I don't know if Ed or Brad know a little bit more about that, but yeah, I believe there's contacts in DFT who are leading and looking on that. Yeah,
not much to add, Jamie. I can say that the DCIA project has fed into that, the learnings for. So yeah, I think there's stuff to be published in the toolkit in the coming weeks.
Thanks, Brad. Next question from Finn K. Please, can you define adoption for this program in legal and financial terms?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that one. That might be one we have to come back to. I'm not sure you'll be happy with my response if I just do it off the cuff, but we can come back to that one, Finn.
Great. Yeah, that will be added to the Q&A log. Is it possible for Tier 1 local authorities to apply?
So Tier 1 local authorities, I assume you mean, is that district councils or is it the opposite way around? I can't remember. But it is all eligible local authorities who can apply. So it's all UK local authorities. So the answer is yes. But I will say kind of where it is one particular, we are looking for multiple local authorities in a singular bid, as it is about scale and regional scope. So please do bear that in mind when applying.
From Chris Taylor, we are intending to submit a regional contiguous innovation region bid that includes devolved authorities. How do you see funding flowing across to these authorities from England? Is that up to lead authority to resolve?
Yeah, so no problem in terms of contiguous local authorities working together. We will be funding a lead local authority, so that lead local authority will have to be nominated to receive the funding, then it will be to that lead local authority to distribute that funding however they think is necessary. So yeah, it will be up to the lead authority.
Cool. Next one, Finn K. Is there a process to allocate different operators to regional bids in a managed way?
I don't know if one of the technical guys want to answer this one.
I think we'll need to take that one back, Jamie. I don't think there is. I think it's up to the local relationships in place with whoever your system integrator or your partners you have on board are. But if we can take that away and have a think about it.
Great, thanks, Brad. From Sasha Taylor, will DSIT and other government associated organisations be sharing baseline information to the local authorities which will help them deliver the project and the reporting?
A little unsure about what level of baseline information that's talking about, so maybe Sasha could come with a bit more information, but so we will be working closely with the projects who are successful and working on those metrics. So yeah, we will be working hand in hand with the regions to help deliver the programs. So I hope that answers the question.
Sasha, is there anything you want to add to that, or we can just come back to that in clarifications log?
Yeah, no, it's just in relation to basically we're trying at the moment to get information out of DSIT in terms of understanding our local community environment and so forth in terms of connectivity, and we're struggling with DSIT not providing that information as openly as I believe it should do personally. But yeah, I believe it's an issue that's been raised many times by many people, but it just helps in my mind support local authorities if you have an open playing field in terms of understanding. So we're Crown organisations, so we should be able to share between us, in my opinion.
That's fine, yeah. And if you want to pop us an email, Sasha, that's fine, and we can have a look at that.
From Anonymous, I think we knew we were going to get this. Who thought 40 was divisible by 3.8? Or does this mean you will have an underspend? Jamie?
Yeah, so 3 point, I say we are building that in to get flexibility in the programme. So I'm sure you'll appreciate how these things work. So we are asking for 3.8 as I think overspending is a risk. So 3.8 is what we're asking for, just building that flexibility, as we do think we're going to get a range of different bids and amounts. So that's what we're asking for. There we go.
Great, thanks. From Julie Bradford, read the sustainability and scalability of 5G innovation regions. Is infrastructure in proposed projects expected to be separate from existing public mobile infrastructure, or is there an ambition for sharing with mainstream infrastructure?
I don't know if Brad or Ed want to come in on this one.
Yeah, there's both is a short answer. If there's existing infrastructure, use that. If you need to build some extra infrastructure, build that. Or if you want to work with a mobile operator, use that. The whole idea is to drive on the economic model of the higher level use cases.
Great, thanks, Ed. From Finn, which types of economic assessment / appraisal will be needed to be completed for a bid?
I would say have a look in the application guidance. I think there's a little bit in there about kind of assessments we might be looking for in some of the questions. I think there is some information there, so please have a look at the questions.
Paul Wilson asked, if the 5G testers and trials pilots are a forerunner to this, is there any point regions not part of 5G TT program bidding? I believe there are 10 of those, and I assume all will bid.
So the answer to that is, well, definitely not. We are welcoming bids from everyone. So 5G TT, we did have those pilots, but I say this is about building on the use cases. We know what the use cases are now, so we do expect people, and we know regions are going to bid who weren't involved in the 5G TT projects through a lot of interest. So no, we do want everyone to bid into this where we can. Obviously, if there's a test bed in place, great. But as I say, this is about other use cases and activities as well as a whole. So yeah, no, they are not eligible for this. So please do bid in.
Cool. Toby Rhodes asked, how detailed does the detailed project plan need to be?
Again, I think there's some information set out in the guidance in terms of the project plan, but we are kind of looking for a very high level one. And as I said, you can provide a supporting document for that if you like, as part of that.
Also, just to go back on the 5GTT point, just a flag that we're publishing the 5GTT interim report in the next coming weeks. So that can be a source of sort of lessons learned, and that might be helpful to people. Next question from Finn K. Is there any guidance on how to set out the economic impact of the bid on a sector being targeted?
Again, that might be something I have to come back on. I don't think there's any particular guidance that we've flagged, but we can look into that. So we can come back on that one as well.
Familiar name from Lee Vasey. Given you are making Sector 31 LGA grants in England, would grant recipients be required to return unused funds at March 2025 if they commit to funding remaining activity from other sources after that date?
I think I'll let our commercial lead, Nick, come in on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think we have a bit of a hard deadline of March 2025 for the end of activity under this programme, aligning to the end of our current spending review period. We would expect that unused resources are returned to us at the end of the period, unless there was any other agreement between DSIT and grant recipients. But we'd be working with grant recipients should any of that change towards that date.
Great, thanks, Nick. From Kate Hillaby, what is the preferred geographical scope of proposals? Regions implies quite a large area, e.g. upper tier local authorities. Are lower tier local authorities such as rural district councils with poor Wi-Fi / broadband coverage likely to have any chance of success?
I'll come in on that one. So yeah, I think I said this in a previous question and answer, but we're not defining exactly what we mean by region and the scale, say geographic area, but what we mean by this, say in terms of regions, we are leaving it up to local authorities to decide how to crowd yourselves into those bids. But I will say, kind of, we are, where it is a district authority applying, we would encourage you to apply with other local authorities as well to make sure you do have that regional scope. I say we're not setting a firm upper scale or lower scale in terms of regional fit, but yeah, we do encourage you to work together where you can to make sure you do have that scale. I say this is about scaling use cases, so it does need to be beyond one district council.
Thanks, Jamie. from Anonymous. This seems to be capital funding only. Does that mean local authorities cannot use the funding to employ anyone? You are expecting local authorities to provide currently employed staff to run these. Do you know the strain on local authority resources?
Again, I think there's something in the guidance around this, but again, Nick, do you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, sure. So in the guidance, grant recipients are required to confirm that all costs which they wish to claim are capitalisable and or can be treated as capital expenditure in line with UK GAAP. Now, that doesn't mean that all spend has to be capital expenditure exactly in terms of infrastructure and not provide for resource or other sort of non-infrastructure support, but we would ask that local authorities take their own view on what is capitalisable or otherwise under UK GAAP. There are provisions for R&D spend, for example, to be counted as capital spend, but we'd ask local authorities to take their own view on that.
I don't know if you fully answered this next one, but it's one for you, Nick. You might want to add to it. Is there any flexibility on the fact that is capital funding only available? Revenue funding, which can leverage and unlock existing capital funding to some areas, would be very useful.
Yeah, from our perspective, we're looking to issue non-ring-fenced capital funding only. And would encourage bids to make clear that they're compliant with that rule in their bid. I'm afraid we can't go outside of those guidelines.
Thanks, Nick. From Julie Bradford, will the 5GIR competition be applicable to all regions of the UK? There has been no DSIT telecoms project in Northern Ireland today. Is this competition applicable to Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland as well as England?
Yep, so I think I said this earlier, so this is UK-wide. We have been having conversations with the devolved admins and the government sphere and territorial officers, so they are all kind of clued into what we want to do. So it is our ambition that 5G innovation regions are spread across all nations of the UK.
Thanks, Jamie. Anonymous question here. What bearing did the pre-comp applications have on this stage of the process? It was suggested that the pre-comp stage was in place for regions to be set up with some high-level info submitted. However, some of the questions today suggest that not every region is in that situation.
So yeah, the pre-comp kind of expression of interest we did a couple of months ago, that was essentially to give local authorities and regions a bit of a heads up about the type of things we're looking for, so they could start to develop their thinking for this competition. So we did receive quite a lot of feedback on that, so that's what we have incorporated into this competition and the application guidance. There's always going to be some questions that people want answered, and not the same questions, but yeah, as I say, we're around to answer any questions you have. So the pre-application competition, so the engagement did have quite a widespread and we had a lot of interest, but appreciate some local authorities might not have seen that. But yeah, please do get in touch if you require any more information.
Next question from Ruth Spencer. Are you planning on circulating the MOU as part of the competition guidance? This would be really useful to share with internal legal teams so we can manage implications of potentially being a lead/support partner.
Yeah, it's our intention to publish a draft MOU. And I think Nick might correct me, in a GFA as well throughout the competition process, so we can kind of give people a head start on that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the clauses in the MOU will reference the bids that have been submitted by local authorities. So they're really a good kind of starting point in terms of defining what's deliverable and what we expect local authorities to deliver in line with what they've proposed at the outset. It will also include provisions around governance and reporting, which we've talked about elsewhere in the session.
Thanks, Nick. I think we've answered this next question, but I'll read it out. Anyway, please do confirm if the funding is only capital. That would seem to prevent many activities that don't result in new assets or enhancements to new assets. Capitalising the types of costs we are anticipating will be hard as we aren't creating any assets. Yeah, I think we've answered that in that it's capital funding only, but Nick, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, that's right, and I would encourage local authorities to take their own view on what's capitalisable or can be treated as capital spend in line with UK GAAP.
Great. Next question from Andrew Emery. Recent experience with Levelling Up Fund Round 2 suggests the timescale between assessment of applications and funding award that you have set out for this competition feels optimistic. To what extent do the awards require ministerial sign-off?
So yeah, it is optimistic, but I think we're confident of sticking to those timescales. They will require ministerial sign-off and decisions for final awards, but I think notifying before November is, I think it's achievable. So yeah, we're sticking to that.
Thanks. From an anonymous one. For regional applications involving more than one local authority, is the funding given to local authorities individually / directly, or should there be a lead local authority?
Yeah, I think we answered this one previously. So there should be a lead local authority, should be identified on the application, and it'll be up to that authority to work out any funding mechanics that might come up with the other local authority, sorry.
Great. Another one from Lee. Do you have any guidance on the FTE and role profiles you would expect to be committed to meet DSIT reporting requirements?
We haven't gone into that level of detail, but we can have a look at that, Lee.
Next question. Can universities be a partner under this programme?
So we're not looking for firm consortia as part of the application, but yeah, of course, universities will be key in some areas. So where those partnerships are in place, please do highlight those in your applications. But yeah, of course, but the fund, as we'll say, the funding will just be for local authorities. So that's who should be leading the application and the programme.
Great. Another one from Lee. Will you pay quarterly in arrears, or do you have the flexibility to pay up front given you are making these grants under Section 31 LGA?
And this one's for Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. The intention is to pay upfront. Now, that's on the basis that it allows local authorities to really get going with their projects and reduces administrative burden. Doesn't mean that we're going to be softening our approach on making sure that funds are spent in the way that was intended and stated at the outset. So as Jamie mentioned, there are quarterly reporting provisions, but they will generally be on a sort of notice basis rather than a pre-approval sort of claims basis that we've used in previous competitions. We will also have an annual review at the end of year one, just to make sure that kind of things are on track, and we'll make spending decisions about year two at that point.
Thanks, Nick. Next question from Sam. What is the expectation from the programme for monitoring and evaluation, including the use of university partners?
So I think, as Nick just said, we will have that quarterly reporting, and I think I mentioned it in the slides. We're looking at kind of wider benefits monitoring and dissemination as well, which will be on a quarterly basis. But we will talk to successful authorities in a bit more detail about what we're expecting of them in terms of monitoring and evaluation going forward.
Right, another one from Lee. At assessment, will you award points to bids according to the size of match funding?
Happy to take this one. One of the questions in the application, I think it's B3, asks for how the project will deliver value for money. I think clearly we'd like to know about any match funding arrangements there, and sort of bang for the buck on funding that we're providing, including any match funding arrangements.
Thanks. We'll also say we're not stipulating match funding as a requirement, but as Nick was saying, where there are other kind of sources, do note them in that question B3.
Next question, an anonymous one. To bring suppliers on board will require a compliant procurement process to be followed. Will applicants be marked down if they have to conduct a procurement due to the time involved, as opposed to applicants who have existing contracts with suppliers?
I'm happy to take this one. Yeah, we do appreciate that you can't kind of until funding's confirmed go ahead with procurement processes in some instances. That means that you won't necessarily be able to provide details of all suppliers that will be supporting you in delivery of your projects. I think we'd just like for as much detail as possible in your application about what those suppliers will be doing, and all of the sort of deliverability aspects around that process. We'd like timescales to be built into your detailed project plan for any procurement processes that you're following. We might also, as part of our due diligence exercise on receiving bids and in the lead up to award and contracting, we may well ask some questions about how you're going to procure those suppliers and under what processes. But we generally expect the local authorities are following procurement law around how they're running those procurement processes.
I think this next question you basically just answered as well. Is it realistic for bidders to have tech partners in place in such small timescales and for such a wide and diverse bidding scope? Also, tech partners will not have capacity to deal with all conversations.
Yeah, I think you've definitely got to think about deliverability and make sure that your delivery plans are realistic, building in any lead-in timescales with both conversations and more formal processes of appointing suppliers. We just, as Jamie said, recommend that you have those conversations now, rather than waiting until you find out whether you've won or not.
Next question. Consortia forming is encouraged, which implies the development of partner relationships pre-bid. However, local authorities, if successful, will need to go through a mandatory competitive procurement process, which could deter potential partners to engage with them prior. ? That was the end of the question.
Yeah, I think we've covered off both elements of that in previous questions, so I think that's fine.
From Chris, my earlier question on funding, can funding flow across country borders with partners, in brackets, Wales/England?
I might defer to Nick on this one, but I think it should be okay. I say we're kind of not defining regions in terms of national borders, so it should be okay.
Yeah, I think local authorities are going to have to put a plan together to present to us on where that is the case. We're only going to be contracting directly with local authorities, so it'll be up to local authorities as grant recipients to iron out any of those sort of details. And so specifically where we're talking about country borders outside of the UK, make sure that they're compliant with subsidy control rules.
Great. The next few questions are both about procurement. We've answered those fully already, so I'll move on to Lee. Will you conduct financial stability checks on local authorities? If not, there are parts of the applicant details tab on the cash flow profile which may not be relevant. Are you able to review?
Yeah, we reserve the right to conduct financial due diligence checks of applicants. I think that's as much the case for local authorities as it is for anyone else that's taken part in previous competitions. I think we do, as part of that cash flow profile document that you've referred to, ask for a link to most published recent accounts, which we'll do a bit of digging into, looking for financial distress and things like that, and anything else that might raise a risk. And we reserve the right to ask questions about those circumstances where that is the case.
Thanks, Nick. Next question from Damien. Is there scope within this project for the provision of upskilling, training or knowledge sharing resources within local authorities or local education?
I will say kind of activities need to kind of feed back to both strategic objectives and fulfill those. One of them is fostering the 5G ecosystem. And I will say kind of knowledge sharing, that dissemination is a key component of that. So I think you have to set out the activities and how that contributes to that objective. I don't know if technical people have a view on that as well.
No, nothing further, Jamie. Just my answer would have been shorter. And yes, there is scope within the project for that.
Great, thanks, Brad. Next question from Lee. Should applicants include indirect costs as part of the amount of grant that they are requesting? It is not clear from the cash flow profile.
Yeah, we do ask for any indirect costs to be included in that cash flow profile document. There are drop downs to say whether something is either direct or indirect, or a combination, and a comments box for each line to give a bit more detail on where those indirect costs are being incurred, by whom, and under what basis. Yeah, so all in the document. But happy to answer any follow-up questions on what goes into those boxes in the document if it would help applicants.
I don't think this is a question, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's anonymous as well, but it might just be a statement to help, referring to an old question. There was an initiative in DSIT to engage with Ofcom to get better access to mobile coverage data for local authorities, which is of course also mentioned in the wireless infrastructure strategy. I don't think that's a question, but if anyone else has anything to add to that.
I was just going to say, Kate, yeah, it's an ongoing piece of work which we highlighted in the strategy. So all I can say on that, right?
Anonymous, is there a central repository for lessons learned for 5G testbeds and trials? As I say, we're publishing the 5G TT interim report in a couple of weeks. But I don't know if Claire from our Benefits Realised team wants to come in on anything else on that front. She might not still be on the call, but that will be shared. Where can we find a copy of these slides and when will they be available? We'll be sharing the slides and the recording of this hopefully tomorrow or the following day. Will local authorities with established DCA readiness be preferred?
So we set out in the guidance for people to note where the complementary initiatives happening. I say we're not going to give extra weighting to particular things. You have to set that in the guidance, and we'll assess that on its own merits. But obviously, there's going to be lots of regions who have initiatives and interventions going on already. But we'll just say please note those, as it will be something we have a look at in the application.
Great. Stephen Muldowney asks, is there any networking events, website, etc., to allow potential partners to connect to bidders? I don't know whether, sorry, you go, Jeremy.
No, I was just going to say we haven't got any more events planned. I say the competition's 6 weeks long, and we will. I say we're encouraging local authorities to kind of engage with those partners where they can. So it's kind of up to you guys. We have done a lot of engagement with industry as well. They are aware of this, and they are aware that we want a conversation with them. So we'll say please do approach during the competition. But I don't know if I have any more to say on that. But also, I say UK TIN is a good resource to have a look at as well. So please do go to UK TIN for that potential matchmaking as well.
Yeah, just a flag. The UK TIN has a specialist supplier service as well as their directory. So do get in touch with Bob Driver, who's on the call, and shared his details earlier. Will there be clawback clauses if built out is incomplete, etc.?
So I think the only clawback clauses that we're intending to build into the MOUs relate to where funding is either misappropriated or not used for capital purposes, on the basis that they're going to be non-ring-fenced capital grant determinations under Section 31 and equivalent under the spending route for Scotland and Northern Ireland. I think the most important point for me from a commercial perspective on kind of if delivery timescales slip and intended deliverables aren't there by the end of March 2025 is communication, to make sure you're talking to us and capturing any delays in your reporting packs and speaking to us about any issues that arise, and we're happy to support regions and authorities in seeing what flexibility we may have once we get to that point. But hopefully a problem for in a year and a half's time, and we're going in with the best intentions.
Thanks, Vic. Probably another one for you, and we might have answered it in part. Do all funds need to be defrayed by 31st of March 2025, or can they be accrued?
Yeah, I think this is one I might have to take back to finance colleagues. I think the language you've gone for so far is costs have to be incurred, but I can definitely clarify whether that's whether that means that they have to have been paid or not, essentially, and what the position is around accruals. Maybe Lee can answer, but I'll defer to internal colleagues and come back to you.
Thanks, Vic. Next question. Can you highlight the sectoral preferences you referred to in the presentation, Jamie?
Oh, you're going to have to make me rattle them off the top of my head now. They are set out in the guidance, but they're kind of 5 key sectors we do set out. So there are public service sector, which includes things like healthcare, smart communities, applications, rural industries, including agri-tech. We've got advanced manufacturing, transport and logistics, and also creative industries. But as I said, they're kind of the key sectors we've outlined, but we do accept other sectors where there are kind of local growth opportunities and strengths. So yeah, please do have a look at the guidance we kind of set out in there as well.
Great. Next question. You mentioned earlier something about the infrastructure ready to go from November 2023 for project start. Can you please clarify what did you specifically mean?
I don't know if Brad or Ed want to go at that one.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, to be honest.
I don't know. It's anonymous, but if anyone wants, whoever posed that, if you want to shout out, then do. Otherwise, maybe pose it another way on the Q&A and we can try and answer it in a bit.
Yeah, it could have been a misunderstanding there in terms of the November mentioning and being ready to go. So yeah, no, that will be fine. Thank you.
Great, thanks. The activity slide would appear to indicate that you require some revenue funded activities to be run, question mark.
I think we covered this on kind of some of the capital stuff that Nick covered. But Nick, I don't know if you want to clarify on that one as well.
Nothing more to add on this one, I'm afraid.
No worries. Next question from David Brown. To be clear, is this meant for infrastructure deployment projects or to build a supporting organisation that will support regional partners to deploy infrastructure? Thinking of something like a catapult type setup versus running deployment.
Brad, Ed, do you want to come on this one?
Yeah, well, the expectation is that the projects will actually do stuff, not just set up an organisation to talk about it. So absolutely, it's the money we'd be expecting to see physical deployments.
Great, thanks, Brad. Next one from Paul Wilson.
Sorry. It's not just about setting up the infrastructure, it's also about doing interesting stuff with the infrastructure. So the use cases are more important, if anything, than the infrastructure that supports them.
Thanks, Ed. Next is just more a comment. I'm sure you're aware that 4 to 6 weeks is during the August holiday period. This makes it even more challenging for proposition development and respective stakeholder governance sign-off. This will result in many qualifying out. There needs to be some more consideration in future to timescales. I think we appreciate the feedback. I don't know if, Jamie, you want to come in on?
I was going to say, we do appreciate kind of shorter timescales, but we are focused on delivering as soon as possible at the moment. And so we have tried to streamline the process and requirements for this competition. So yeah, take it on board, but we do want to start mobilisation and delivery as soon as possible.
Next question, another anonymous one. As seen through the DCA benefits realisation process, due to the infancy of 5G technology, it was difficult to demonstrate any true realisable benefits, meaning that it focused on ensuring regions were ready when 5G is eventually rolled out further. Are you expecting this to be the case again?
Well, I guess my comment would be DCIA was providing passive infrastructure for the rollout of public 5G, whereas this is not. So it's slightly different. I appreciate the comment that densification hasn't happened to date, but yeah, this is not really focusing on public 5G.
Thanks, Brad. Next question from Julie. Are successful local authorities expected to know their wireless requirements and start procurement for infrastructure at project start in November, or is time to develop requirements with use case owners expected?
I think Brad had a moment to comment on this, but I say, as we outline in terms of activities, part of this is identification of those sector projects and requirements. So yeah, don't know if anything else to add to that, Brad or Ed.
Yeah, I think you should have a good idea of what it is you're trying to do and not set out an application that says we will set out and discover along the way what we're trying to do. If you've got a strong proposition, get it into the application as quickly as possible. There's no dependency. You've got to be ready to start delivering this stuff in November. That's far too quick to do anything of interest.
Thanks, Ed. Next two more just comments, one about short timescales over summer, which we've spoken about, and the other about capital spend. So we'll move past those. From Ruth Spencer, thanks for the response on the MOU. Do you have any idea when this will be published during the competition process? Many councils will need board/portfolio sign-off to submit a proposal and will need to be cited on the implications. The time is already incredibly tight for doing this. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So we're drafting at the moment and are going to publish it as quickly as we can. I think all of the principles that are going to be included in that MOU are included in what's already published in terms of the guidance of what we're expecting of local authorities to deliver and how and what we're expecting in terms of governance and reporting. So I really wouldn't expect there to be massive sort of curveballs in that MOU beyond expectations that we've set through the guidance. But as I say, we are working on the drafting and we'll publish as soon as we can.
Thanks, Nick. Next one from Chris. Could LB's commission work with universities as part of collaboration?
Don't know
They
if
can.
Brad or Ed. Yep.
That's a straightforward one. Yes, they can.
Thank you, Ed. Nick said Lee's point on resource requirements to service DSIT is very relevant. Any benchmarks, etc., would be really useful. I guess that's my statement of the question, but I don't know if anyone wants to come in on that. Ed?
Yeah, well, the move to this quarterly reporting model is an awful lot less than we've been doing under the diversification of testbeds and trials programs. So, you know, the fact we've made it more lightweight means we don't have benchmark information on it at the moment.
Thanks, Ed. Next question is anonymous. UK SPF/REPF funding is supposed to be upfront. However, we're still waiting for our allocation from 1st of April for delivery in this financial year. This type of process is unworkable across any government project when delivering. Completion is expected by March 2025.
Well, I can't really comment on other funding programs and stuff that DLUC might be doing. But I think Nick outlined for this one, we will be paying upfront through Section 31. I don't know if Nick, you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, that's the intention, and it's exactly so that projects can get going as quickly as possible. We're cognizant of kind of cash flow constraints on local authorities and don't want sort of a claims basis of recouping costs post hoc to slow anything down. So that's what we've gotten for upfront determinations and upfront payments on a year-by-year basis.
Someone's just, sorry, my voice is going, I don't speak this much clearly. Someone's just asking for some further clarification on capital/revenue. We can make sure we provide further clarification. I know we've got lots of questions on that, so that will be updated in the Q&A log. This next one, again, is about capital, but I'll ask it anyway. If the local authority allocates some of their capital funding to the partner listed in the application, will that partner receive 100% of the allocation?
Yeah, so I think this goes back most importantly to the question of subsidy control. We're granting subsidy to local authorities on a no subsidy basis, which doesn't mean that the Subsidy Control Act doesn't apply to local authorities. It will be for local authorities to justify how they're either onwardly granting or otherwise complying with subsidy control regime. Sorry, Andy, did you have something to come in?
Well said. I was just about to say what you just said, so thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Andy.
Great, thanks both. Next question from Chris. Based on the EOI review, is there an intent to ration funding across different industry verticals? Is there a risk that this could switch off adoption focus in areas not receiving funding?
So no, that's not the intention. So we have said we've got key sectors to cover. We want to cover. So we expect regions to cover 2 or 3 sectors. So yeah, no intention at all rationing funding for some areas. So yeah, I say we're looking for that portfolio approach, and we do want kind of that diverse approach across the UK. So I don't know if Brad had anything else to add to that.
Nope, nope, I'm happy with that, Jamie.
Nothing to add on that, I'm afraid.
Moving on. Next question is, initial cost plans are highly likely to be inaccurate. What provision will be made for change control?
Yeah, I can take this one. So the cash flow profile document that we've put out with the bid pack is the sort of central tool that we would expect local authorities to use to reforecast their costs on a quarterly basis as part of their quarterly reporting responsibilities. We think it's definitely reasonable for us to ask for a sort of yardstick at the outset of how you intend to spend under the programme and under your projects. But we do appreciate that these will be in quite a few cases estimates or best estimates at the outset. So we'd expect that reprofiling takes account of move from actuals to anticipated spend, and that you're in some way able to refine any uncertainty or estimates as your projects go through life. But yeah, we do definitely take on board that at the outset there's going to be a little bit of estimation in those profiles.
Thanks, Nick. Next question. What is the market failure that this intervention is targeting and proposals should address?
So I think,
oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say it's kind of, we set it out in the guidance about what we're trying to address and look at. So this is about making that step from 5G TT to widespread adoption, the 5G use cases. So as I said, we've set it out quite clear in the guidance what the objectives are and what we're trying to achieve. So please do have a look at that.
Yeah, I would just add that from a subsidy control perspective, obviously, as Nick said, we're still bound by the Subsidy Control Act. So it's a prerequisite to identify which particular market failure you're aiming to address within the bounds of the competition.
Thanks both. Next question. Given the limited funding values and regional scale, is it realistic to expect much infrastructure to be built? Is this innovation fund more about process and stimulating industry to address sector demands?
I don't know if Brad or Ed have anything to comment on that.
I refer to my previous answer about doing stuff as opposed to talking about stuff. So yeah, I appreciate it's tight time scales. I appreciate that these things take time, but yeah, I think it's about bringing new innovative ideas, and it's about demonstrating it so we can go look, see, and replicate.
I mean, clearly you're not going to get a great deal of infrastructure built for the amount of money involved, but that doesn't stop you using this money to attract people who build networks to part fund, attract some private funding in there, so you get more bang for your buck. But again, the whole idea is to stimulate, do interesting things rather than to do stuff at scale.
Thanks, Ed. Someone asked, would it be possible to circulate the meeting chat? Conscious there are lots of offers of collaboration in there. Thanks. I'm happy to do that. And maybe I'll put out a note and see if anyone else wants to send me their details, and I can circulate those if that's helpful for people to connect. Next question from Ian. Will bid evaluations take into account relative socio-economic value at the local level, e.g. most value wins?
So yeah, built into the application process and the questions, it asks questions around this kind of thing, value at local level and economic opportunities, growth opportunities. So we will be assessing that as part of the application. I think it's set out in the questions.
Thanks, Jamie. I think we've already partly answered this, but noting reference to the earlier 5G pilots and the limited bid timescales, could one draw the conclusion that the result of this bid process will be to fund the development of these existing pilots? Is there value therefore in submitting a bid application?
Brad, Ed, don't you have to come on this one?
I think it points to regional readiness. I would suggest those that have engaged in the past, whether it be test beds and trials or whether there's other digital initiatives ongoing and can demonstrate that, will be better placed. But it's certainly not a direct line between test beds and trials and this.
Certainly, there's no clear link between test beds and trials. It may prove advantageous if you've done good work in the past, but it doesn't necessarily have to be test beds and trials.
Next question from Steve. Could a program around boosting net zero and productivity in food and drink supply chains through advanced telecoms be eligible?
I think, yeah, so we've kind of said all interventions are eligible. You just need to set out in your application what the benefits of are, how it contributes to the strategic objectives. So interventions based around that advanced wireless connectivity. Yeah, but I say you need to make sure it aligns with what was set out in the guidance.
Next question. 3.8 million will only go a certain distance in bringing demonstrable innovation. Will local authorities coming together to form cross-regional projects be able to aggregate application amounts, i.e. 2 LAs coming together 2 time slots of 3.8 million applications, or would it be bundled as one application?
I'm happy to take the first comment on this. I do appreciate 3.8 million is not everything. Appreciate it's a short timescale to deliver, but it's definitely something. I think we wouldn't want any bids to be conditional on any other bid being accepted. So bid has to be able to stand and be deliverable on its own merits. And to that end, we can't combine pots across bids. Has anyone got any other comments on that? If not, I hope it answers the question.
Cool. I'm conscious we've got 4 minutes left and we probably want to do a bit of wrap up. So there's 2 more questions. Maybe we can try and answer them quickly, but the rest of the questions and the ones in the chat that we haven't answered, we'll get those, as I say, onto the Q&A log on Gov UK in the coming days. So from Barney Smith, given your statement that cost profiles are initially best estimate and you anticipate reprofiling, what does that mean between 23-24 and 24-25 financial years?
Yeah, so I think they have to be as accurate as you can be, given some uncertainties. I think it's going to be a lot trickier for us to increase any funding envelope, and although we haven't given a definite line on this yet, there's a certain amount of administrative process around increasing determinations, reissuing of determinations if funding envelopes needs to be increased. So would like that you make sort of conservative best guess estimates at the start. But as I said earlier, it's an ongoing conversation with successful applicants as to what that reprofiling looks like and what the implications are over the life of their projects.
But I think, Nick, we can add to that it is more difficult for us to move funding between financial years than it is within a financial year. So there will be focus on how much is going to be spent this year and next year as individual years. You can't assume money not spent in this year can be spent in the following year.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Keith.
Great. And then last question from Julie. Subsidy control was mentioned, but can you comment on Northern Ireland's latest position on subsidy control related to this competition in telecoms? I understand post leaving the EU, there are some points being worked through for Northern Ireland in particular still.
That is true. Hi, I'll do a very quick answer. I'm happy to talk about this separately, Julie, because it's complicated. But essentially, the Northern Ireland Protocol does apply in Northern Ireland, as does the Subsidy Control Act. However, we have legal advice, which unfortunately you can't rely on, but we have to say that telecoms infrastructure is a non-tradable good, and the Northern Ireland Protocol only applies to tradable goods. So as far as we're concerned, I work with BDUK and we are delivering in Northern Ireland. It is the Northern Ireland Protocol doesn't, and thus state aid law doesn't apply to telecoms infrastructure, but happy to talk about it.
Perfect. As I said, I think we'll leave it there with the questions. Thanks for asking lots of interesting and some tricky ones. I think we expected that. But yeah, so we'll be posting all of those, including those that we've answered on the Q&A log on Gov.uk. We'll be sending around this recording and the slides, and I'll try and send around all of those details that everyone had put in the chat. Jamie, I don't know if you have any sort of final words.
No, I just want to thank everyone for coming along today. So we're really excited about this programme, this initiative. I will kind of finish off by saying we do see this as an enabling kind of phase to kind of identify and aggregate that demand for those 5G use cases. So please do read through the application guidance and the Q&A. As Kate said, we will be publishing the Q&A and sharing the slides, but do get in touch on the inbox we've got if you require any questions, and we'll be here to help. But again, just thank you very much for joining, and I think we're out of time, but yeah, thank you very much.